so I wrote a little something to finish us off. A few months before my mother surprised all of us by dying of a treatable condition, I was in Tanzania walking the Serengeti with my husband between two men with loaded rifles. I stuck close to James, a Maasai with a leather hat, mirrored sunglasses, a Denzel Washington grin, and a story for every sight we came upon. A lion couple, moments after mating, so gloriously postcoital they might as well have had lit Benson and Hedges hanging from their lips. A string of trotting zebras as synchronized as circus ponies, the ugly Pumbas with their tails like periscopes bouncing above the grasses, a cantering tower of giraffes, 18 we counted, grand and Susian. We liked the hartebeests, a social, harmless animal that made sport all day, and we were instantly turned off by the haughty secretary birds, who, thanks to white hair and robes of black body feathers, brought to mind Supreme Court justices. James explained that you have to spend a lot of time looking at big game before you're ready to go small, to care about birds and things like bugs. And so it wasn't until that last morning, thanks to a riveting sermon by James, that we came to have great feelings about termites. They're really something else. Their mounds can be 4 stories high, that's 40 vertical feet, made by bugs, smaller than your thumb. The walls are harder than concrete, James said, asking us to come closer and knock on the mound and appreciate its durability. Carbon dating, he gushed, tells us some of these structures are older than Stonehenge. He went on to explain the ventilation system, chimneys and vents that create constant circulation through internal rooms segregated by function, places for food storage, nurseries for baby termites, fungus gardens, they grow mushrooms inside the mound. Shortly after I got home from our great adventure, I went to Philadelphia to see my mom. She had lived alone in the house of my childhood for the 9 years since my dad, the family hartebeest, had died of bone cancer. She looked thinner, but it was hard to assess how much since she wore a baggy nylon tracksuit, think Snoop Dogg, and she was never much for hugging. We sat at the kitchen table, my phone between us, swiping through Africa photos. Guess what made this, I say, showing her James in a wide-legged stance in front of a massive brown mound. She had no guesses. Termites. Termites are the enemy of all realtors, Kelly. She had started selling houses when all 3 of her children were in private colleges and my father lost his job, an event that validated and doubled her pragmatism. I moved on, though disappointed, that she, an utterly competent woman, was not really getting off on the termites' get shit done ethos. After we caught up, things took a turn. In the 10 days it took my mother to part ways with the world, I watched her closely. I had just had so much practice beholding on the Serengeti. I watched her eyebrows like ticker tapes tracking the rise and fall of pain, a sag in her jaw that told me she was really asleep, a change of temperature in her swollen hands, a yellowing around her nose, a rattle as she inhaled new horrible colors blooming around her toes. When you're on foot among wild things, attunement comes naturally. It's a mechanism of our survival. In the noisy world we've made, inside convoluted systems and institutions and relationships, attunement requires real commitment, a shrinking of self, be small, a redirecting of all attentions, look closer. It is amplifying the full force of our senses. And from what I can tell, not that many people can do it. Or maybe they don't choose to. I mean, it will wear you out. Attuning, when done right, is cognitively expensive. But if you never stop to catalog the details that make each person an N of one, that person will become vague, and flat. They will disappear. If you don't note that they hum when they take the first bite of coconut cake, or the skeptical expression they make when they're reading, the stiff or silky feel of their hair, the mix of final net and fabric softener that hits your nose when they enter the room, they'll leave you and never come back. Later and forever, you'll pine for specifics people always do, snapping their fingers and saying, what was that pin she always wore? What's that song she loved? Lie, la, lie. Lie, la, lie, 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 la, lie. If you don't notice, you don't get to keep any of it. The contest for our attention is, of course, unrelenting. We're always choosing one thing over all others. On a road trip, I think about my achy lower back instead of the ribbon of a river to my right. At dinner, I focus on my husband's interesting take rather than that he is giving said take with food in his mouth. Or I privilege present over past. My girls were self-absorbed teenagers, but they are here now. Many times a day, I pull out my phone and decide where to place my thumb and pointer finger to pull open a cluster of pixels. We choose, consciously or not, which holes to tumble into, what details we will memorize. After she passed, I went home to the newly unoccupied house she bought with my father for $38,000 in 1969, the place where we were a family together, the place where we became whatever it was that we were and are. We ate here and bathed there. We grew tomatoes in that yard and took our one good family portrait by that tree. We were safe here. I spent weeks by myself cleaning, organizing, photographing, distributing, cherishing, donating, selling, setting out by the curb with a $20 bill taped to the side, please take this, I'll pay you. Mostly, I was memorizing my parents' now forever intangible selves by their objects, the things that I could lift and hold and smell and feel. Embroidery looms, heating pads and compression socks, lightly used wrapping paper, my grandmother's mahogany dining table, a value pack of Suave body wash. I paused for some time deciding what to do with a half-eaten Pepperidge Farm coconut cake in the freezer. It took her the good part of a month to work her way through it, one sliver a day, forever metering her calories like almost all women I have ever known. There was a grapefruit spoon that I put in my purse as soon as I saw it, wanting it more than her jewelry because I knew how useful it was to her every day, how often it brought her to a favorite moment, that first bite, and how much usefulness mattered to her, her highest value, I think. I counted 4 rosaries in her purse, which she called a pocketbook and carried high under her arm, in her bedside table next to her asthma inhaler, both lifesavers in the night, in the cup holder of her Buick along with tweezers she used at stoplights, much to my embarrassment, and one under her pillow. I studied them and took the one that seemed the oldest. I have it on my desk. I notice it often. You might even say I behold it. This sequence of things is funny sometimes. You can't tell it's unfolding, but when you look back, it's right there. How seeing the exotic made it possible to marvel over the familiar. How being charmed by a garrulous heart beast made you ready to bow down to the industrious termite. How becoming nothing but the sum total of your senses allows you to know she is dying today. It is happening, and she is willing it, and she is okay. Be small. Look closer. This is important, says the tracker who loves to draw your eye to the wild things, says the grown child with her hands on the chest of her mother as she pulls in her last breath and stops. Be small. Look closer. This is important.